you know, with all of that being said, you're really leading into the part about community, right? So our African American men were taken away from us, right? So our situation forced out a bunch of alpha females. We had to be mommy, daddy, housekeeper, go to corporate America. We had to do everything and do it with this expectation of smiling and easygoing, right? When at the end of the day, we're carrying so much load. And now your men is here. You're saying right now, you're seeking someone, right? You want to dial that down, but you've been in this alpha state for so long, it's hard to say, okay, I'm gonna let him lead. And understand that's not a slight to you or your incapability. It's just you want something more, and you know that you need to step back in order for someone else to take over. Yeah. So, you know, and I feel like in the Black community, as I'm going to say for women, for me, it is hard to quote unquote be submissive when your world, that your existence that you're living in is continuously forcing you to be this alpha.
It goes back to what I said too, is that these brothers need to give us something to follow. You know, I want something to follow. Like, I want you to show me the example of what my life is going to be like with you. And I just, you know, it's kind of difficult to find.
A lot of brothers, because I'm in an environment where I talk to them. And yes, it is true. A lot of brothers are not leading anywhere because they don't know where to go. Most young men of eligible age don't have a clue what the word relationship really means. You have to start there. So you see a guy out there and you'd be surprised the moment he opened his mouth. Looks good, and he opened his mouth and you just appalled what's coming out of his mouth.
Right.
Because look at where they're because most young men are dragged into manhood. They were not celebrated. They were not, you know, nobody led them over the line. They got their call either from their peers or from television or whatever. How do they know when they arrive at manhood? They don't. That's the answer. It's based on what the social trend is. How many honeys can you bag or whatever? So he gets into a relationship, he lies to you and get into a relationship, and now he's stuck. He doesn't know where to go. Right. He has nothing to offer you, no direction. Not only that, my sister, he doesn't even know that a man is supposed to provide a direction for the woman in his life. He does not know. Right. And that is one of the major problems with the Black male today. And there's a couple of brothers out there who are trying to help to rectify it. I'm one of them. So yes, some of the brothers are receptive to understand, because when you see, when men gather with men, they talk differently. And you get to understand, and being a father of daughters, I'm listening with both ears. And some of these guys are clueless. What is the first thing a female wants in a relationship? Absolutely clueless. They just think it's sex all day, every day. And you explain that, no, women have feelings. So the bottom line I'm saying is this: yes, it's a woeful situation, and to tie into what Tashana says, a lot of female, the alpha comes out, and then later on, it's a problem dialing it back. It is true.
It is a problem.
And in the end, wherever your energy is, you're gonna have to go with that, or if you can modify it without, without too much strain or whatever. Because at the end of the day, energy match. I think Devon said he's married to an alpha female. It's so funny. I was with an alpha female, and it was fireworks every day, all day. Every day, all day. Because for whatever reason, it's just natural. And not only that, it brings out a little bit of arrogance sometimes. When I quiet down, I see it and I'm like, yeah, I kind of stepped over the line right there. I admit it. But with that in mind, I'm able to modify my position somewhat. But being an alpha male is not something I can relinquish. I can modify it, but I will not relinquish that. And can two alphas work it out? I personally, I highly doubt it. I don't think so.
No.
But don't worry. For alpha female, there are males out there who will fit in perfectly with you. But my worry is, won't you just get tired of him sometimes?
Well, of course. Of course. Like
So
I myself, I have to make a conscious decision. Like even in my relationship now, I have to make a conscious decision to chill. Like
right,
you don't have to do that. You chill, like lay back. I'm away right now, and I'm making a conscious decision this weekend to just this week to just really just fall back and chill. And a lot of times people don't even ask me to do this stuff. Like I'm jumping in there, leading stuff that nobody even asks me to do, but then I'm complaining that I have to do it, but nobody asks me to do it.
that's the alpha dilemma.
So I gotta,
Yeah.
I'm a chill.
Yeah, that's the
You know,
alpha. But we're working on it. Many of us out there are talking to some of these brothers on the street, grabbing off the street and talking to them and forming groups. And, I'm part of a group now called the Mastermind. And that's precisely what we do. We talk to young brothers and try to show them and make them understand certain situation. And hopefully they, in the future, will make a great raw material for a woman to mold into a husband.
Right.
That's not a misspeak. A man is just a raw material. You ladies know that. You have to mold him into, and a husband is never fully a husband. He's a husband in training. And that's what we're trying to mold these brothers into.
but I think women stop doing something that they innately have a keen sense of doing, and that's paying attention to their instincts. And when I say that, how many women know when their gaydar goes off? They have a gaydar, so they say, "Oh, I can tell he's sweet or he's gay. He has some sugar in the tank." But that works with a straight man too. You can tell when a man is your personality type or your affinity type. You can tell that instinctively. You can tell it on the opposite end too. You can tell like, okay, he may not be the alpha, but I can train him up to be the alpha. No, it doesn't work like that. So you go out there, you see somebody has the possibility to be alpha, but they won't be alpha no matter how much training you do with it. But you know your own instincts. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I was in the military, I kept getting thrown in leadership positions. Every time leadership positions, every job I got leadership positions until I realized that, oh shit, I'm a leader, but I'm not an alpha leader. I'm a sigma leader. I can bring together a whole mass of people with a quiet voice.
A lot of women also they're not looking at the real leading part or the alpha part of them. They're looking at the potential part, and they want to build up.
That's the downfall.
And it's like, oh,
that's the downfall, right there.
Exactly.
Because potential is just that, potential. Unless you see ambition behind potential, it's nothing.
When we talk about that nature versus nurture situation, isn't that one of those things where you may have been raised seeing your mothers, your grandmothers, your aunties struggle in a relationship context in a way, trying to make this man, this alpha or whoever they want them to be. And there's this constant struggle that's happening. So you grow up and you're like, oh, it's supposed to be a struggle. I'm supposed to be trying to make him be because he's a good man. So, you work with it. Like, and that, even though instinctively what you're talking about, that you see it, you're like, this is more work than it is anything else, but you keep on trying. You keep trying to make this man whatever you think you need him to be.
No, I think it's different because I grew up with nothing but strong women in the South. Like when I was down South, I grew up with them. And my mother is like, 5'5", and she would scare grown men that are like 6'5" and up. She would literally scare the hell out of them by her speech, by her hands. She would I seen her beat a grown man ass. And I'm like, okay. But she, that's just the type of women I grew up around. I didn't think of nothing of okay, they are inferior to men, or men are their weakness or something like that. I just thought like, hey, they don't take no shit from nobody.
Right.
It is, whatever you do, do not try to make a man into an alpha. If that's your thing, don't. It will never work. There's a longer reason for that, but I'm not going to get into that now. I'll just put it this way. Imagine you want a center table for your beautiful house to tie everything together, and you just happen to be a carpenter. You're going to go down to the lumber yard and you're going to look for the best piece of wood that you can make into that center table that you want. The wood can't have too many knots in it. It can't be too twisted or whatever. And somewhere with a keen eye, you're going to look for one that says, yeah, this has the potential to make that table. So it is, lady, when you are when you about to get into a relationship or you meet a guy, you need to know what energy this guy is bringing. And I think it was it Roderick who just said, most women, for whatever reasons, just seem to stop trusting their intuition. It's the greatest gift God has ever given to human. And women have it more than men. And I cannot remember when was the last time I meet a woman who fully trusts her intuition. And guess what? Your intuition is always right. If you're getting a vibe about a man when you meet him, don't ignore it. Because the truth is, a lot of brothers out there are not ready. Find the way it is, living day to day, hand to mouth. Nah. And you're a driven female who wants something, want to achieve something. Bad idea, ladies. Do not compromise. In the end, you're going to be very angry with yourself for doing that. All right? Thank you.
Because the drawback to that is, no man wants to be raised by a woman that's supposed to be his partner, his lover, because they look at her like his mother.
Mm-hmm. That changed the dynamic of the relationship completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I hear men calling their wives ma and she calling him pa. I just can't get into that. I'm sorry, it may work for them, but the ma pa thing, sorry, doesn't work for me. I'm just an alpha, sorry.
All right, do you ladies have anything to say?
I want to jump in on that idea of compromise. I feel like we tend to compromise, male and female, but I feel more females. We compromise the wrong way. And I think it's about knowing, I think Rochelle said it best, like she wants a man to take the lead, but he has to show her what that direction is. And I think those are the times when we find someone who is going to lead us in the direction that we want to be led, in a successful one, whether it be financially successful, family successful. We want someone to provide us with that direction in order for us to compromise those archetypes that we are and have been all of our lives, whether it be an alpha or a sigma archetype. And I think that the correct way to compromise is someone who is going to let you let down your guard that you've had up for so many years and really embrace your true self. The person that can allow you to be silly as you want to be, act a fool when you want to be, have stank breath, but tell you you have stank breath, go take care of that. We want that type of person who we can have and really let down our guard and truly compromise the right way. And it's very difficult, especially for me who has more embraced alpha archetype the older I get, to find someone who's like that, because you always hear the same thing. Oh, you come off so intimidating, or, oh, why can't you just like chill a little bit? You seem, and then we go back to the whole idea of being that angry Black woman when you do express yourself, when you do show that you can take the lead. So it's kind of just trying to find that person in all of the societal and nature and nurture norms that are pushing on you that'll allow you to really be yourself and compromise to be a partner and not just someone who's above the other person.
I want to say that I never sought out a certain type. Then I'm like, now I need somebody who is going to like correct me and put me in my place. But accordingly, I did someone who was like, I want to say he was really like an omega, like very like, he was like the weird one. And I mean, after dating someone who was a alpha personality, I didn't want to be with anyone like that no more. But come back around, I was like, no, I need someone with a little more dominance, a little more like, you know, be a man. Like it was just too much. It's like I'm being the man and you're not being the man. So when I got married, I was in a like a I could say like in a alpha archetype myself, but then my husband also is. So in our household, you can say we're both alphas, but we're we're permitted. Like you are the alpha of this part, and you're the alpha of, we know our roles, and it works. It took a long time to get there. We have been together for 13 years, because our personalities are very strong. And my personality became like that going through relationships. I was never like that. So going through relationships, it made me a different person. And when I met my husband, he's like, yo, like, but he kind of liked that because I was like, nah, we're not doing this. And like, no girl ever told him that. So for a girl to say no to him, or we got to do this way, like it was shocking to him. Where he was a person where a girl never told him no. A girl always was very subservient to him, and it was a difference.
Yep.
Okay, so let's get into our community. Now, knowing the archetypes that you are, how do you feel like as an African American community that our perception of what we think we should be affects our mental health? Like, how do you feel, especially for guys, the guys that are looking at the boss in the community, the guy that seems to have it together, he got the suit, the money, the girls, the car, the house, and we feel like that's something that we should try to be and emulate in so many words, but not really understanding what he's going through in a mental capacity. So how do you feel like our perception of what we should be affects our mental health in the Black community?
Well, it starts with one thing that always that breaks down the Black man, and that is the phrase "be a man." Stand up, be a man, be a man. So what that does is more harmful than it does good, because it attacks your psyche on a level where you say, okay, be a man, instead of talking to you, okay, this is the issue I have with you right now. It has nothing to do with you being a man or not, but this is the issue I have with you as a leader. But when you say be a man, that means you're attacking him as a whole. So he don't know what the issue is.
So then, okay, so that comes from everyone, right? That
comes from the household, that comes from
right.
the community, that comes from everybody.
Right. But if that's what young boys are hearing, young men are hearing consistently, then there's this question in place, right? There's a question of if he's a man or not. Because if you're going to tell him to be one, then that really becomes a question. So then those that's around him are hearing it. It's a question. It's not he is, it's a question. You're questioning him. Society's questioning if he's a man or not, and he's questioning himself. So how you feel like that's going to really play a part on his mental health?
Because he don't know who he is. He started questioning who he is as a person. Like Michael said, he meets with a lot of young men, and the only key to being a man is through sex. They have no blueprint on how to be a man anywhere else, so they have no foundation. And without a foundation on how to be a man, as far as the personality traits, you should walk on the outside of the curb. You should basically say yes, sir, say yes, ma'am. All these different soft skills that it takes for you to be just a genuine, good human being of a man, we don't get. Like, I didn't know I was supposed to walk on the outside of the curb when I'm working with a woman until I got grown. You know? I did not know I was supposed to open the door for a woman. What am I supposed to open the door for you for? You got two hands, open the door yourself. You know? So the chivalry part of it that we're supposed to be instilled as a man, that chivalry helps develop our character and our morale and our leadership. But without that chivalry foundation, we just out there, only thing we know is, okay, we need to go get sex with men and women as we can.
Okay.
Because that's what teenagers and little boys tell each other.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have men coming in and say, hey, no, you need to do this right here for your family. You need to make sure your family is praying. You need to make sure your family is on a set schedule. You make sure your family is going towards generation wealth. I mean, you see a lot of Black people that will stand in line for a damn shoe, but when it comes to Robin Hood, they won't learn. They won't take steps to download Robinhood and learn investments when it's free.
Right.
And we don't have men to come in and tell them, say, hey, go get this right here. Instead of getting a birthday gift for somebody, go get them a stock. Turn your Christmases into stock options. And so I'm not gonna get you nothing for Christmas. What I'm gonna get you is I'm gonna get you a couple of stocks in this company right here. You watch those stocks, you learn from those stocks, and you continue to pass it on, pass it forward like that. So it's all about deconstructing what is supposed to be community and structure and reconstruction in a positive, more efficient way.
I want to piggyback off of what Roderick just said. And the term that comes to mind is self-actualization. I had to look it up to remember what it meant because I thought it meant what I meant. So I just wanted to confirm. I think a lot of this has to do with what we're describing. And I know we're focused on these archetypes, but a lot of this has to do with another different type of archetype that I was looking up earlier. And I don't want to talk about that, but I want to talk about the premise of it, which is the fact that just as human beings, not even just talking about men, but we're focused on talking about men right now. But as human beings, self-actualization comes when you explore the different ranges of your childhood, you know, the different talents that you have and the different faults that you have. And when you could come to a point where you can mold those two sides together to competently mature into an adult, that's when you reach your full potential. But most of us can't, because either we're not encouraged to explore the full spectrum of who we are, or we're dissuaded from it. And some of the things that Roderick said, a lot of times what we tell young boys, especially young Black boys, is, you know, if you don't fit this predefined, narrow definition of what a man is, then you're not a man. You know what I mean? If you're not an extrovert and you're not an alpha, then are you really a man? You know what I mean? So how many young boys grow up thinking that, oh, I need to conform to these stereotypes of what a man is to be a man. And if I don't, if I'm not aggressive, if I'm not domineering, then am I actually a man? And then what oftentimes happens is they never fully mature. You know what I mean? They grow to be this caricature of what they could have been and still searching for that and never really attaining it. And likewise, for the person looking on, they may present themselves in every which way that you believe an alpha or even a sigma should be, you know, independent, self-confident, productive, successful, but they still haven't achieved that full range of maturity that they need to in order to be a healthy partner in a relationship. You know what I mean? And by relationship, I don't just mean in a, you know, romantic relationship. I mean as a father. I mean as a brother. I mean as a spouse. I mean as a leader. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because to go back on what you said with self-actualization is, you have young men that can't go to, young boys that can't go to men and be like, okay, when you're growing up, you're born from a man and a woman. Okay? So if you say another dude is attractive, he's attractive. Do you have anything else behind that? Any sexual desires behind that? You need to find that out within yourself. A lot of people, a lot of boys are not finding that out within themselves to say, okay, am I attracted to men? Or is this being forced on me? Am I being touched? You know, they're not finding out these cues to help them grow into the person who they are. Because right now, if a grown man will basically be able to say, okay, that man's attractive and keep it moving. If he get hit on by another dude, he can basically say, thank you, keep it moving. I'm not that, I don't get down like that. Thank you, keep it moving. But an immature man will basically get offended, want to fight, say, no, I can't believe this gay dude hit on me and so and so and so. And that's not how, that means there's something that's missing inside that person right there, where they haven't grown as a person within themselves.
Expand on that. I want to give another example from that archetype that I was describing. So they got a range of different ones. And basically the way that they describe it is, at some point in your life, you reach this stage where you progress from a child to an adult. Regardless of what that adult represents, you know, every one of us reaches that stage at some point. What they say is that they have it listed as almost like a pyramid, and there's four different angles to the pyramid. The top of the pyramid is you reaching the potential of your fullness. The lower corners of the pyramid are what they describe as the shadows of yourself. So for example, one of the roles in these archetypes that they describe is the opal child. It's basically the maturity of a young boy's affinity to love. So what they say is that when a young boy doesn't reach that potential in adulthood, they escape to one of these two different types, which is either the addicted lover or the impotent lover. So either there's somebody who will never really fulfill their needs and urges, or there's somebody who will never fully love someone. And to reach full maturity is someone who can coalesce the two and really explore all the different parts of themselves and their youthfulness and childhood to really reach their full potential as the lover in their fullness, is the way they describe it. The lover in this fullness is conscious of all of those negatives within themselves. It's not that they don't have them, it's just that they're knowledgeable and conscious of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you two brothers are hitting all the nails here right now, but I just want to tie it up like this, and those are all salient points. You know, in tribal Africa, we used to have something called a ritual. That's when a boy crosses over into manhood. I realize today most people don't have a clue what that looks like. In female, it's easy because there's a biological clock that says, hey, I'm not a little girl anymore. I'm now becoming a woman. For boys, the line is more blurred. So the question is, yes, there's a lot of young men out there who are impotent in a lot of ways because he still wants to act like a boy. And then when it suits him, he wants to be a man. Trouble is he have no idea what it means to be a man. And a lot of women have to suffer through men like that. So what is needed? We need to get back to something in the Black community when we celebrate boys who have crossed over into manhood. Because a boy needs to be around men that let him know you are now part of the inner circle. A boy doesn't know other than that because he needs to know that he's valued. Men need respect. And we're talking about the respect that comes from other men. You see, a single mom can raise a boy and raise him to be mannerable and, ambitious and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to being a man in the macho, in the male sense, he still need to have males around him to give him that little extra that mom can't give him. And this is where we need to get back to how do we take our little boys that are growing up and create some kind of ritual that says to them, yeah, you have crossed over. I've been searching to come up with an idea, and I welcome any ideas any of the brothers can come up with, because we have to stem this by letting our young boys know when you're a man, these are the characteristics, trait that you display. Responsibility. I think it was Roderick who said, pardon me, brother, if it wasn't you, who said, I didn't know when I'm walking with a woman, I should be on this side. And that's a common thing with a lot of men. A lot of men, the word chivalry means nothing to them. They think it's a drink because nobody ever told them what it actually means. So I think we need to start looking for ways now to celebrate young boys over into manhood. We can't put them in the forest anymore and give them a spear and said, if you survive by morning, the village welcome you as a man. That's how it was done. They take you ass and they put you in the forest and give you a spear and said, you make it out in the morning and you didn't get eaten, welcome home. We don't have that luxury anymore. Even though I wish we did, because listen, man, some of these brothers need a hard wake up, but we need some kind of ritual to where our young boys can be welcomed back into society and just said, yes, you are now a man. And
I I think you guys are talking about community, right? A sense of community where even if
Yeah.
the father wasn't in the home, there was somebody that was teaching this young man about what a man should or shouldn't be doing. And I feel like the African American people in general, we're losing and have lost a certain level of sense of community where even someone else can mentor your son, right? Or someone else can mentor your daughter, because this is not just a male issue. There is this perception of how women should behave, what women should walk like, talk like, dress like, act like based on the age that they're in. And there's all of these perceptions that are being played out of what we should be, right? And it's the same thing for men. And in the same way that sense of community is no longer there, and this is kind of where that feminism kind of birthed itself, in the sense of women needing to feel empowered, right? And not just beneath the man, but feeling equal to, where women needed to start having healthy competition with each other, and not to gain the attention of the man per se, but just healthy competition to help themselves grow, to build up themselves, right? And I think that all of those things got mixed up when we lost our sense of community, because now there's competition amongst women just because, in a hating fashion and not in a healthy competition fashion. And it's the same thing for men, right? You see that guy, you think he's alpha, you should want to be like him, and everybody's telling you you should want to get the house and the car and the kids, and all the girls want you, and the fly chain, and all of these things that represents a man based on what they think it is. But you don't know this information because men aren't raising boys anymore, right? You got boys raising boys, because that sense of community is lost. There was nobody overseeing that father to be, to say, this is what you should do. This is what you're supposed to do. This is your job as a parent, as a father, as a man in the house. Those things are kind of gone now with that community.
I hear what Michael's saying about the rituals, and that is key. And I think what we're seeing now are some of the vestiges of the desegregation. As we try to assimilate, we lost a lot of our cultural rituals, which would have addressed those things that you're speaking of. And then you add to that all of the men that were in prison during the crack epidemic, absent. Mom's got to work 2 jobs. So who's there with the kids, the boys or the girls? So now we have TV, movies, social media giving us these new rituals that have nothing to do with our culture. We never had super sweet 16s where you have people that are just making it, spending wedding money for a 16-year-old that may not even be passing in school. So we have just gotten so far away from our cultural aspects that address these problems that we're seeing right now. You know, we had the auntie, the grandmother, but the grandmother and the auntie's at work too. So the time you were with your nan or your grandmother, you learned those things about, you said, the rites of passage for girls. Yeah, we start menstruating. That's the physical aspect. But what about the other part, the psychological part, the part that ushers you in from being a little girl to a young lady? What does that mean? And so now you have these 2 lost people coming together, trying to have a relationship, making kids, and repeating a horrible cycle.
But I believe it's like this right here. And when you said when a female comes to womanhood when she gets a cycle. So
Well,
at that
that's
point,
what Michael said, that we
no,
have.
I agree with
something
that. Yeah.
To market.
Yeah, that's the measure of it. But when it comes to that time, it's what's happening is you don't have that flip of the coin. Whereas up until that point where a female gets her menstrual, shows that she's about to go into womanhood, she goes with her father. Her father teaches her, hey, this is what's going on in the boys' mind. This is what I want to protect you against. And the son goes over to the mother and say, hey, this is how you should treat a lady coming from. This is, you see, I'm your mother. I want you to find somebody like you. I want you to treat a lady like this right here. This is how you cook. This is how you do it. So it's like flip. The roles we flip, where the mother is supposed to come in and teach the boy when he gets to a certain age the domestic side of it, and the father's supposed to come in and teach the girl the man side of it.
Absolutely.
So that's the ceremony I think Michael is leading to, that has to be conceptualized, where even if it's a broken household, the mass can pick that up and form a community artificially, so to say.
Yeah.
I want to jump in real quick. Because what I'm thinking about in terms of what we're talking about, it almost seems like we all talking around a common issue of accountability in the home. You know what I mean? That's what it really comes down to. Is it takes those parents, it takes those caregivers, it takes those people who can reach that child to be accountable for that child's development. And there isn't a great deal of that. You know what I mean?
But as a community, though, we have to start making it the norm again.
And I get that, but I think more practically speaking, and I'll say this to say that there was a program I was involved in Louisiana. Louisiana has the highest incarceration rate of Black people in the country, right? And I was involved with this youth outreach program out there. I talked about it in one of the other episodes. And when you sit down with these kids, you can talk to them, you can learn their stories, you can get the message across to them, but it doesn't really sink in. Not in the way that the people who are closest to them can get to them. Right. So as a community, we can talk about, you know, oh, we can get these messages out, we can do these podcasts, we can create programs, but it really comes down to the people who are closest to these kids is what we're talking about, being able to have that impact. It really comes down to having them be accountable to bringing forward these generations of children. You know what I mean? And I think as a community, it is this quote, I forget who it came from. It was like, you know, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family is really what it comes down to.
Then it'll spill out into the community.
Exactly.
But Lee, you point out the problem in a nice way, but I think it's Akim, the sister just mentioned. In a perfect world, Lee, you are correct. Responsibility would have been key in the house, except that's not the world we live in. How do you deal with the situation? Here's a single mother who is not single by choice, raising two kids. Let's in this case say two boys. She has a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old at home. The problem is the man she was with, and this is a common story, is either not a part of their life or very barely. So now she has to take on 2 jobs to keep a roof over their head and trying to get her kids into a decent school. The finer things that I grew up with a grandmother. So when my mother wasn't there was a grandma. So I had that continuum where I was learning constantly. I never knew what it's like to come home from school and there's not an adult at home.
Absolutely.
That's the reality for kids now. And the sister just mentioned, when those kids are at home, Lee, they're watching TV, they're getting fed. So they end up with an image of, because mom is trying her best, but nobody's there. And in the end, we end up with kids who are not properly balanced, going out into the world to become adults. The point I'm making is this: it would be nice to catch it in a homely, but that's not the world we live in right now. We live in the Black community, we live in a world of single parent. And like you said, when you talk to most of those guys in prison, that's their reality. They either grew up with one parent or no parent at all. So the question is, how do we fix that so we can see the impact on society at a larger scale?
And I think that's more what I'm talking about, is that I think the teachers in the chat could probably speak to this better than I could. How many times, for the teachers in the chat, were you dealing with a child and without the input or buy-in from that parent of the child or caregivers, it could be a grandmother, it could be an aunt, it could be a father, it could be the kid's brother. But without the input and buy-in from them to help facilitate some type of intervention when that child's struggling, you're just not going to get through. You can have as many intervention programs and meetings as you want to sit down and have one-on-ones with that child. But if you don't have the buy-in of the people closest to him, none of it is going to matter. And I think that's more what I was talking about with that program, is that we could do those programs till we blue in the face. We could sit and have as many discussions as we want, but without the buy-in of those people to be accountable. And by accountable, I don't mean going it alone. I mean being willing to let in the resources that they need in order to help them with the development of that child. If it is, services, if it is just a voice of reason, if it is somebody to help, but it still requires the buy-in from those caregivers is really what it comes down to, and accountability from those caregivers to do that. And that's really what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that, you know, these households are just, you know, damned if they can't do it on their own. I'm talking about them being accountable for that process.
You're
And
right.
I'm not just talking about the parents, I'm talking about whoever those caregivers are.
I'm agreeing with you. You are correct. What I find is many single mothers, especially Black, don't know where the resources are.
Mm-hmm.
In a white community, it in most cases, it comes to you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the Black community, Black women, and you know, so for the sake of pride, sometimes you just give up because you're trying to find, can I get a little help? And the reality is, I think we live in a society where you get punished for
And I
being
think
poor and Black.
to that point,
It's not an excuse, but for those who want the help to make a better society, it's like it's a struggle to find it.
And that's a good point, because a lot of times they don't know where the help is because there is none.
Exactly.
And
exactly,
because we talk about mass incarceration, we talk about defunding police, we talk about the fact, and what that whole premise is that community resources in Black communities are lacking, but police funding isn't, right? So how do we not just resources from public resources, but even community intervention, I think is more what we're talking about. But I think you still need both. You know, we need to find a way, to your point, white communities have these resources. Those resources in white communities have more funding than their local police departments. It's not the case in most Black communities. You know what I mean?
But I think these conversations could help plant the seeds to start those organizations.
Absolutely.
A lot of people are looking at entrepreneurship now, nonprofits. So these could be community-based little setups, like you have Boy Scouts and stuff like that. And once you get it set up, you have the model, and then you can just pass that around from community to community.
And I think the perspective that I come from is, it's not like we didn't have that. You know, when we had the civil rights movement, the Black Panther Party, we've had these in spades. The problem is,
then the government started funding them, and when they defunded it, it went away.
Is that, you know, that's the whole issue of what systemic racism is. You can have community intervention. We can start up programs, but systemic racism will find ways to either, you know, divert that or interrupt that, I guess is the way to describe it. And so how do you find ways to, because the funding is coming out of our communities.
Right, I think you have to look at what did they do to screw them up, and then what do we have to do in structuring this time around to avoid those same mistakes.
Right.
If it's self-funded, that I think that's where, when we start getting into all the grants that are government reliant, as opposed to working with other corporations that where we spend a lot of money, again, self-funding between us. If we get a little creative so that their hand is not in it and we do retain the control.
Mom is trying her best, but nobody's there. And in the end, we end up with kids who are not properly balanced, going out into the world to become adults. The point I'm making is this: it would be nice to catch it in a homely, but that's not the world we live in right now. We live in the Black community, we live in a world of single parent. And like you said, when you talk to most of those guys in prison, that's their reality. They either grew up with one parent or no parent at all. So the question is, how do we fix that so we can see the impact on society at a larger scale?